Funny or not, when deciding what franchise to cover next on the channel, my mind went to the Rocky Creed movies, specifically what Creed 3 could look like. So I did what most people do. I took to the internet. I remember some Creed 3 fan trailers being posted to YouTube in years past. Imagine my surprise when I saw news that Creed 3 is planned to be released in November of this year. When I watched Creed 2 for the first time, I was worried that Creed 3 would be a grudge match between Adonis and the son of James Clubber Lang. Not because Apollo had any real beef with Clubber, but because up to this point, the Creed movies have been recycling story beats from the Rocky movies. Creed 1 was about the son of Apollo. Creed 2 was about the son of Ivan Drago. So will Creed 3 be about the son of Clubber Lang? Creed 4 the son of Rocky Balboa? Creed 5 the son of Tommy Gunn? Creed 6 the son of Mason Dixon? I guess with good writing any premise could work. I suppose the real question becomes one of identity. Creed 1 and 2 were intended to pass the torch from Rocky to Adonis. If future Creed films decide to retread the Rocky pantheon, then the Creed series won't develop its own identity. Okay, I get that bringing in the son of Ivan Drago was a great nostalgia trip for the fans. I confess that when seeing Rocky and Drago on screen again after so many years, it was amazing for me too. But that is also the problem. If they want to pass the torch, then Rocky needs to let go. I get that in universe there's a story to tell. Ivan Drago killed Apollo, so having a rematch between their sons balances the cosmic scales, I suppose. Today on Canon Fodder, we will investigate the Rocky film universe in order to extrapolate the plot for the Creed 3 logical sequel. Let's begin. Rocky 1 in 1976 tells the story of a washed-up, nobody boxer named Rocky Balboa, the Italian stallion played by Sylvester Stallone. His name catches the eye of the current heavyweight boxing champion named Apollo Creed, played by Carl Weathers. Having no viable opponents, Apollo decides to give an underdog, Rocky, a title shot match. Rocky and Apollo fight, and the match is awarded by a judge's decision to Apollo. Rocky 2 in 1979 sees Apollo getting criticism because he didn't win his match against Rocky by a knockout. Due to his ego, Apollo arranges a rematch against Rocky. Rocky and Apollo fight, but this time Rocky is victorious, winning the match just barely by a knockout. Rocky is crowned the new boxing heavyweight champion. Rocky's last line in the movie, while rather common, is very emotionally powerful in the context when he says, "Yo, Adrian, I did it." Yo, Adrian, I did it! The heart of Rocky is expressed here so plainly. He is fighting not so much for himself, but to give his wife and child a better life. In Rocky 3, in 1982, we see Rocky, rich and complacent. He has successfully defended his title 10 times against boxers that are past their prime. His manager, Mickey Goldmill, has been protecting Rocky from facing legitimate challengers. Clubber Lang, played by Mr. T, confronts Rocky at his statue unveiling. He calls Rocky out and then shames him by making sexual comments towards Adrian. Rocky agrees to the match, but due to his complacency, he loses the fight and the heavyweight title to Clubber. Mickey suffers a heart attack during the match and dies. Apollo confronts Rocky about the loss of Mickey and the title and decides to train Rocky in his way in California. Apollo helps Rocky develop a fighting style that is more mobile, and when he fights Clubber in the rematch, Rocky wins in 3 rounds. At the close of the film, Rocky and Apollo have a friendly rematch. The winner of this friendly bout is not revealed for 33 years. Rocky 4, 1985. This movie is the most ridiculous in a series that is normally very grounded in tone. The heavy-handed anti-communist overtones and Cold War politics run all through this film. Also a heaping helping of nationalist patriotism and commentary about Eastern and Western ideologies is laid on thick. Not to mention that a sentient robot is reprogrammed by Rocky's brother-in-law, Paulie Panino, played by Burt Young. This movie is over-the-top, preachy, and self-indulgent, but a ton of fun, and 80s as F. Anyways, the synopsis is Ivan Drago, played by Dolph Lundgren, is a Russian boxer that has been trained and drugged up to be the ultimate physical athlete. In an international dick measuring contest, Russia challenges the USA to a boxing match with Ivan Drago fighting for Russia and calling for Rocky to represent the United States. Apollo watches this challenge on TV and decides that he wants to fight the Russian. Apollo asks for Rocky's help to get him the match, and in a press conference, Apollo antagonizes Drago. It is the complacency of Apollo this time around that leads him to being killed in the ring by the powerful Drago. To avenge Apollo, Rocky travels to Russia to train in the wilderness and fight Drago. Arguably the best training and boxing sequences from the whole series are seen here. After 15 rounds of Rocky taking abuse, he finally knocks Drago to the canvas for a count of 10, winning the match. Rocky V, 1990. While Rocky was in Russia, Paulie signed over power of attorney to a scummy accountant who lost all of Rocky's money. The family moves back to the slums of Philly, and Rocky reopens Mighty Mick's gym to train new boxers. A talented newcomer named Tommy Gunn, played by Tommy Morrison, is trained by Rocky. Gunn leaves Rocky and signs with a new promoter, who gets Tommy a title shot. Gunn wins the title from Union Kane, but the press calls Tommy a paper champion. Tommy tries to get Rocky into the ring for a match, but Rocky refuses. Paulie insults Tommy and gets punched in the face, which angers Rocky, and both men head outside to the street. The movie ends with Tommy and Rocky fighting, with Rocky eventually knocking Tommy down. The Rocky pentology is a reflection of its time. On the surface, these movies are a sweat-soaked slice of macho masculinity. Dig deeper, though, and the there and back again story of this big-hearted everyman teaches that money and fame is fleeting. Family is the most important thing in life. Rocky VI, 2006. Titled Rocky Balboa, sees this aged and widowed Rocky fight the current boxing champion. An ESPN simulation predicts that a Rocky in his prime would defeat the current champion, Mason Dixon. In a line-blurring decision, Mason Dixon was a boxer in real life by the same name, and was the undisputed heavyweight boxing champion from 2003 to 2011. Rocky gets a boxing license because he wants to fight some exhibition bouts to work out some of his frustration. Dixon is convinced by his manager to challenge Rocky to a match because his fights are predictable and losing popularity. The match happens, and after 10 rounds and Mason breaking his hand, Mason is declared the winner by decision. This movie wasn't really needed to bookend the Rocky story. I think Stallone was testing the waters to revive as many of his old characters as possible. Soon after, we saw another Rambo movie in 2008 and the first movie in the Expendables series in 2010. Creed I, 2015. This story introduces us to Adonis Creed, the bastard son of Apollo. His birth mother dies, and after being in the foster system for many years, Mary Ann, the widow of Apollo, adopts him. He graduates college and works at an unfulfilling job in a financial firm. He meets Rocky at Adrian's restaurant and asks him to train him. Rocky declines at first, telling him that Apollo wouldn't want him to be a fighter. This is a great callback to Rocky I, where Apollo says, "Be a thinker, not a stinker." The persistence of Adonis wins Rocky over, and he eventually agrees to train him. In the finale, Adonis fights Ricky Conlan, and the decision is awarded to Ricky. The announcer would go on to say, "Ricky won the fight, but Adonis won the night." This puts Adonis on the map as a legitimate boxer and heir to the Creed legacy. Creed II, 2018. After a string of victories, Adonis wins the heavyweight title. Meanwhile, Ivan Drago and his son Victor have come to Philly and want a match against Adonis. Adonis and Victor fight, but the bout is ruled as a disqualification after Victor hits Adonis while he's down. Adonis needs to recover after the beating he took, and Rocky takes him to the desert to train. During the rematch, Adonis gains the upper hand. Before Adonis can do lethal damage to Victor, Ivan throws in the towel. sparing his son a fate similar to Apollo. Creed 3, 2022. I could not find any story details about the upcoming sequel. The main antagonist has been cast, but nothing beyond that has been published as of this writing. Some idle speculation. Okay, so the new guy cast in the upcoming Creed 3 movie is black. Who could this be? Is he the son of Clubber Lang or Mason Dixon? I think both are unlikely. It could be a new fighter with no history connected to Adonis. Maybe it will be a thematic retread of Rocky 3, and Adonis will be distracted or complacent and lose the title. Training ensues, and by the movie's end, he will win the title back. As a critical critic, I think this is likely, as Hollywood isn't very creative these days. This is only a skeletal overview, and I'm sure there will be dramatic character moments. I'm only guessing at the narrative path for the planned sequel. Now, investigation time. In a series like this, where we are assuming a handoff has taken place, the carryover will both be themes and characters. The story plots that appear in the Rocky series are rags to riches, the love story, the rivalry, and the decline. The Creed movies cover these four ideas also. So what about archetypes? Rocky and Creed both have the hero, the villain, the maiden, and the mentor, so these are covered too. So we need to focus in on characters that have been left unexplored, but which ones? His half-brother and sister. In Rocky 2 and Rocky 4, we only get a brief on-screen look at them, but for this series to become fully Creed-centric, they need to be included at some point. I think the likelihood is very high that we could see a rivalry between the Creed brothers. Something that has always bothered me from Creed 1 was the character assassination of Apollo. We are told of an extramarital affair that happened off-screen without any previous indication of disloyalty shown by his character. As seen in the movies, Apollo's flaws were hubris and self-aggrandizement, not lust or loyalty. This is a logical sequel that I'm plotting here, so while my next point might be far-fetched, it's not impossible. I submit the possibility that Apollo didn't die in Rocky 4. As presented, we see Apollo knocked down during the fight with Ivan Drago. Then later at the funeral, the casket is closed. We don't actually see a dead Apollo. For this deception to be carried out, I believe that only his wife Marianne would know that Apollo is in a coma. That after the match, Apollo was kept alive by machines and Marianne decided to bury an empty box, rather than his legacy suffering the public embarrassment of him in a coma or vegetative state. Now my final verdict. The Creed 3 logical sequel would go something like this. Adonis has been successful in boxing, and now he wants to retire. His half-brother, let's say his name is Ares, in keeping with the Greek mythology, has trained up in secret and challenges Adonis for the title and the Creed legacy. He has another son. Apollo is disappointed with both his sons. They had white-collar careers, but chose to become boxers. The movie would end with the brothers fighting in the ring. Now for some musings. From Rocky 2, we had the birth of Rocky Jr., but the story never got around to exploring a father-son rivalry. The Rocky pentalogy followed the rise and fall of Rocky, a circular journey that saw Rocky largely unchanged as a character. His body was broken down, and his fortune was lost. We had some glimpses of Rocky Jr. training, but nothing more. So with the introduction of Adonis, we did get to see Rocky train a son, so to speak. We also saw Rocky get to resolve his guilt over Apollo's death by helping Adonis. The missing character arc in the series belongs to Apollo. His character deserves a say relating to the events, and we need to see him grow as a person. I think a reframing of this affair is needed. Perhaps the marriage was breaking down, or they were getting separated. Perhaps Marianne stepped out also. Would Apollo side with Adonis or Ares? How would these conversations turn out between Apollo and Marianne? I think the reintroduction of Apollo into the Creed series at this point would be the stamp of identity that future movies would need in order to become their own distinct thing. If this upcoming sequel has some or all of my conjectures, then Creed 3 is the perfect movie to have three creeds in conflict. Only time will tell. Until next time.